just wanted to ask you, obviously we've got so much history and we're talking about, how do you know
Mm.
about the Maharanis, where they have been, and then you're kind of piecing things together, and it just feels like a maze. There's so much information around London about everything. How on
Mm.
earth do you kind of know I'm going to stick to topic, and this lady went from here to there to da 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 da? How does it
There's a
happen?
lot, yes, there's a lot of reading and a lot of creativity to kind of link stories to places. And, because I've been doing it for so long, I kind of enjoy it and I like it and I can make the stories. And then, I don't know if it's natural, it's just because I enjoy it, because when you're there, you have to hold an audience. You can only hold an audience if you can tell a story. You can't hold an audience if you're just reading from a book. So I have to bring that kind of creativity, that theatre into it. But what I was saying to people is when you get a family, you get the young children, you get the mum and dad, and then the elders, the grandparents turn up as well. That's when I see the magic happen, because I can be speaking, but when we're walking, the grandparents are telling their kids the same story, but their version of it. Because these stories are Punjabi stories. People know about Maharani Jind Kaur, who are, elders. They know about Ranjit Singh. So they're telling their grandchildren. I'm like, well, why don't you talk about this at home? Okay, नहीं ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ Star Plus ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਾਂ TV ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਕਿ your teacher is your granddad and grandmother. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਾ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ. You come to talk to pay me to tell you that you in your family you have this knowledge. And for the kids, I always say to them, you've got a phone in your hand. ਸਾਰੇ ਕੋ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ iPhone ਜਾਂ Samsung ਦੇ ਨਵੇਂ phone ਆ. You just hit a button and press record. And I said, too many times people come on my tour and they say, my mum told me something, but I remember now, but she's not alive anymore. My dad used to tell me, but he's not alive anymore. So these stories go with our older generations. They leave us. Whereas in olden day Punjab, people used to tell the stories at night to each other. And now what we do is we watch a lot of TV and a lot of social media that we don't talk to each other anymore, but you want to pay me to tell you the same story your grandparents could have told you at home, which is fine, but it's just a nice way of...
Isn't that telling on the way that you have crafted this amazing project and how you're really delivering it across, generations? You've got the grandparent, you've got the parent and the child who are now together for the first time trying to learn something. And maybe you actually have pieced the puzzle together for them so they can go home and learn about their own history, connecting things together, which is quite powerful.
Their own stories, their village stories, their migration stories. What did they do when they came here as a job? Because not everyone none of us had an easy time. Our grandparents didn't have an easy time settling into East London, West London, North London. But now we live in so much comfort, we just think they went to the job centre and got a job. It didn't work like that. These guys had to tough it out. And if you log that story down or write it down in a school project, you'll never forget it and say, my grandparents came and they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that, but they ended up doing this. And now we're successful, or the family is successful. But it all came from someone's hard work, because these doors weren't open in the 1950s and 60s for you to just get a mortgage, just get a job, just quickly buy a shop. You couldn't do that then. You couldn't do it. So these guys had to tough it out. And they don't speak about it unless someone asks them. Then they'll tell you. And they tell me on the tour, they tell me, and I'm like, well, your own kids don't know your own family stories, but you need to keep those stories, because that's when the books and in the future, the films will come from these stories.
And isn't it amazing? Because these days we're seeing more and more children on social media and away from their parents and really don't know how to converse. But this is a fantastic project where they could actually learn to mentally engage with their children engage with their grandparents. It could open up so much.
This one story, Benji. One story was that when we had an older gentleman, Mia Chacha, and when he passed away, we went round his house, and the men in one room, they have some photo albums there, so we take the photo albums and we look at their lives and their stories, and when Mia Chacha passed away, there was this photo album in his house of when they had a car in the 1960s and they took it back to their Bind from East London. They drove all across and they had the photographs and they had everything in there, with my granddad, and 5 of them went. Then when my grandfather passed away, we were at home and we took the photo albums out, the men, and then we had the Turban Act in 1982, when all in London, we had to go down the community to protect the Stad from the Race Equality Act. And I had an album full of about 100 photographs in there. I said, I write about this stuff, and I've got one photo from Google, you know? And yet, at my grandfather's kind of funeral time, we found a whole album full of photographs from that march, you know? So I've got all of them here behind me, because now I supply those photos to people who are researching that. You know?
Look at that.
You know? So, yeah, I couldn't ask him, what did he do? What did he do there? What was the day like? You know, we couldn't, because I didn't even tell them it was there.
In person, if you were able to converse with those photos, how many real stories you'd get out. Wow.
Exactly. You know, and that's what happens in a lot of, I get this story a lot on the tours, you know, that and it's harsh, but we need to keep preserving our family stories, you know?
Absolutely. Been amazing.
Thank you so much, Rav. ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਕਿ ਇੰਤਜ਼ਾਰ ਨਾ ਕਰੋ ਉਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਗ੍ਰੈਂਡ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਜਾਂ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਕ੍ਰਾਸ ਓਵਰ ਕਰ ਜਾਣ ਜਾਂ ਇਸ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਤੋਂ। ਇਹ ਟਾਈਮ ਅੱਜ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ, ਇਹ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੁਣ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਟਾਈਮ ਦਿਓ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਸੁਣੋ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਕਹਾਣੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਣੋ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲਿਖੋ ਜਾਂ ਰਿਕਾਰਡ ਕਰੋ, ਜਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੁਣ ਸੰਭਾਲਣ ਦਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਪਿਆਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਅੱਛਾ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਹੈ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਰਾਜ, ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ।